Imagine waking up one day and realizing that every choice you've ever made, your career, your relationships, your beliefs, was never truly yours. That somewhere, hidden in the background of your life, an invisible hand was guiding you, not with violence, not with chains, but with something far more subtle: approval, acceptance, the quiet nod of recognition when you follow the rules, and the uneasy silence when you dare to question them. You think you're free. You think your path is yours. But what if freedom itself has been carefully choreographed? Consider the paradox. Brilliance has built the world. Visionaries, rebels, misfits, these are the ones who've changed the course of history. And yet, in your own life, brilliance is not what is rewarded. What is rewarded is obedience. The ability to stay in line, to do what you're told, to think inside the boxes handed down to you. Brilliance inspires, but obedience secures. Brilliance unsettles, obedience reassures. Why does society reward the latter? Think back. When was the first time you were praised for being good? It was probably when you did what you were told without resistance. Sit still. Don't talk too much. Follow the instructions. That smile of approval felt warm, didn't it? But notice something: your reward wasn't for your creativity, your curiosity, or your courage. It was for compliance. And the lesson was planted deep. Safety lies not in brilliance, but in obedience. Now, carry that seed forward. Look around you today. Who are the people society elevates? The ones who maintain the system, not those who disrupt it. The quiet employee who never questions orders may climb faster than the thinker who challenges them. The student who memorizes perfectly is honored, while the one who dares to ask why is told they're difficult. Isn't it strange? The very society built by rebels and innovators now teaches its children to suppress rebellion and worship order. The very system that glorifies Einstein, Gandhi, or Jobs punishes anyone who imitates their courage too closely. And so, the paradox grows. Society depends on brilliance, but rewards obedience. It feeds on the fruits of genius while clipping the wings of those who might fly. But why? Why does society fear brilliance when brilliance is the source of all progress? Why does it condition you to obey when your deepest instincts are to explore, to question, to create? You might argue it's about stability. After all, too many questions shake the ground people stand on. Too much brilliance can become fire, consuming old structures before new ones are ready to rise. But isn't that the very nature of growth, burning away the old to make room for the new? Then another question emerges. Is obedience a safeguard against chaos, or is it a tool of control? Think of the small, silent rules you live by every day. Don't ask certain questions at work. Don't speak too loudly about your doubts. Don't step too far outside the invisible lines that define what's acceptable. Who drew those lines? Did you? Or were they drawn long before you could even see them? What if the truth is that obedience isn't rewarded because it keeps society stable? It's rewarded because it keeps society predictable. Predictability makes people easier to manage, easier to control. And brilliance, by its very nature, is unpredictable. So here you stand. You feel the paradox pressing down on you. Obedience brings comfort, but at the cost of your individuality. Brilliance promises freedom, but at the risk of rejection. And you wonder which path leads to a life worth living. Would you rather be celebrated for your obedience or remembered for your brilliance? And if you choose brilliance, are you ready to pay the price? These questions cut deeper than we like to admit, because they reveal the conflict at the heart of human existence. The conflict between belonging and becoming, between security and authenticity, between being accepted and being truly alive. The truth is, society whispers to you constantly, obey and you'll be safe. Obey and you'll be rewarded. But somewhere deep inside, another voice whispers back, obey and you'll never be free. Which voice will you listen to? And more importantly, why was obedience made into a virtue in the first place? Who benefits when brilliance is silenced? The answers are not simple. They reach back through centuries of philosophy, psychology, and power. To understand them, you must confront not only society, but yourself. Because the real question is not whether society rewards obedience over brilliance. The real question is, why do you accept it? The hidden problem and its psychological, philosophical roots, Section 2. You've already felt the paradox. Society thrives on brilliance, yet it rewards obedience. But the question lingers why? Why has obedience been sculpted into virtue, while brilliance, creativity, and rebellion often find themselves punished, suppressed, or quietly erased? To answer this, we must go beneath the surface, into the dark soil where culture, psychology, and philosophy intertwine. Because obedience is not simply a rule imposed from above, it is a psychological architecture constructed within you, reinforced from birth, and maintained by forces so subtle you rarely notice them. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And perhaps that is the hidden problem. Society does not want you to accept yourself completely. It wants you to accept only the parts of yourself that can be controlled. The obedient parts. From the moment you were a child, you learned this lesson through a simple form of psychological conditioning, reward and punishment. Raise your hand in class before speaking, and you receive praise. Challenge the teacher, and you're labeled disruptive. Follow the script of good behavior at home, and you're showered with affection. Resist, and you're met with disappointment, anger, or silence. Slowly, the message takes root. Your worth is tied not to your uniqueness, but to your compliance. But why does this happen? Because humans crave belonging. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that hell is other people, but what he meant was that the gaze of others defines so much of who we think we are. We are social creatures, and rejection wounds us more deeply than almost any physical pain. Society, knowing this, builds its most powerful form of control, not through violence, but through acceptance. You obey because you fear exile. You comply because you dread the invisible death of being cast out. Nietzsche understood this when he warned of the herd instinct. The herd offers safety, but at a cost. You must move where it moves. Think what it thinks, and never step too far ahead. To stand alone is to risk becoming prey. And so, brilliance, which by nature steps away from the herd, becomes dangerous. Not just to the individual, but to the collective. Yet, here lies the paradox again. Without those who step away, the herd never moves forward. It circles endlessly, safe but stagnant. But obedience is not only enforced by social pressure, it is reinforced by an invisible hierarchy of power. Michel Foucault described it as disciplinary power. The way institutions like schools, workplaces, and governments train bodies and minds, not through open force, but through constant observation and subtle correction. You don't just learn facts in school, you learn how to sit for hours, how to stay silent until called upon, how to internalize authority. By the time you enter adulthood, you no longer need the teacher to scold you. you scold yourself. This is the genius of obedience. It transforms external control into internal self-discipline. You become both prisoner and guard, both captive and warden. And the brilliance inside you, the restless questioning, the wild imagination, the disruptive courage, becomes the prisoner silenced in your own cell. Arthur Schopenhauer went further, suggesting that life itself is suffering, and that humans seek to minimize this suffering by avoiding conflict. Obedience becomes the path of least resistance. Why challenge the system when doing so only invites pain? Better to comply, to keep your head down, to survive. And yet, what kind of survival is this? Is it survival at all, or a slow death of the spirit? Aldous Huxley painted this picture with haunting clarity in Brave New World. He imagined a society where people were not forced into obedience by chains, but lulled into it by pleasure, distraction, and comfort. Nobody resisted because nobody wanted to. Brilliance was unnecessary when obedience promised endless entertainment and shallow satisfaction. Does that sound so different from the world you see today? Think carefully. How much of your obedience is born from fear, and how much from comfort? Do you obey because you dread punishment, or because obedience now feels easier than thinking for yourself? This hidden problem has psychological roots as deep as philosophy itself. Viktor Frankl, who endured the horrors of concentration camps, discovered that humans can endure unimaginable suffering if they have meaning. But in a society that prizes obedience over brilliance, meaning is quietly stripped away. You are taught not to seek your own why, but to accept the why handed to you. Get good grades, get the job, follow the path. Do not ask too many questions. The tragedy is that meaning cannot be given. It must be discovered. And when obedience replaces discovery, the soul grows hollow. Here is the true danger. Obedience, dressed as virtue, becomes the silent killer of authenticity. It's not that society explicitly tells you, do not be brilliant. It tells you, be brilliant, but only in ways that fit the system, and brilliance that must conform to obedience ceases to be brilliance at all. This is the hidden problem. Not that society fears brilliance, but that it redefines, it reshapes it until it no longer threatens the existing order. The radical becomes respectable. The visionary becomes marketable. The rebel becomes a brand. In this way, even brilliance is absorbed into obedience. And so you must ask yourself, when you look at the life you are building, is it truly yours, or is it the obedient version of youth curated? Acceptable self-society rewards. The philosopher's warning echoes. The unexamined life is not worth living, but the obedient life is precisely that unexamined. Safe, rewarded, but empty. You stand at the threshold of an unsettling realization. The problem is not that society rewards obedience. The problem is that you've been conditioned to desire those rewards. Conditioned to trade your brilliance for acceptance. Conditioned to fear the loneliness that comes with being truly yourself. And if that is true, then brilliance is not only punished by society, it is betrayed by the very person who carries it, you. The unseen consequences, Section 3. You may think the cost of obedience is small. A little silence here, a little conformity there. What harm could it do? After all, isn't it easier to play along than to fight every battle? But unseen consequences rarely announce themselves in dramatic ways. They creep in quietly, reshaping your mind, your relationships, your future, until one day you look back and realize you've been living someone else's life. The first consequence is subtle, yet devastating. The erosion of curiosity. Children are born with a wild hunger for truth. Watch a child long enough, and you'll see it endless questions. Insatiable wonder, a refusal to accept the world as it is presented. Why is the sky blue? Why can't I do it this way? Why does it matter? But slowly, through years of correction and subtle punishment, curiosity is tamed. The child learns that the reward does not come from discovery, but from compliance. And by the time they reach adulthood, many stop asking why altogether. They no longer seek truth, they seek approval. The result? A society full of people who know what to do, but not why they do it. Efficient workers, polite citizens, predictable consumers, but hollow souls. The second consequence lies deeper in the realm of identity. When obedience becomes the path to safety, you begin to split yourself. There is the self that longs for authenticity, the one who dreams, questions, creates, and there is the self you present to the world, the obedient self. Over time, the mask hardens. You wear it so often that you forget there is a face beneath it. Jung called this the persona, the social mask that hides the true self. But when the mask becomes too heavy, when the authentic self is buried too deeply, the psyche rebels. Anxiety, depression, and emptiness emerge not as illnesses to be cured, but as cries from the silenced soul. How many people are haunted not by external oppression, but by the quiet tyranny of their own compliance? The third consequence expands outward, infecting relationships. Think of how obedience structures love, family, even friendship. When you fear disapproval, you do not speak your truth. When you crave acceptance, you mold yourself into what others want you to be. Slowly, relationships become less about connection and more about performance. You play the role of the good partner, the good friend, the good child. But intimacy cannot thrive in performance. And so, even surrounded by people, you feel alone. The fourth consequence: mediocrity becomes the norm. Brilliance, by definition, disrupts. It asks questions that unsettle. It challenges traditions. It dares to fail spectacularly in pursuit of something greater. But obedience seeks safety, not greatness. And so societies built on obedience reward mediocrity disguised as success. The safe employee is promoted. The compliant student is awarded. The agreeable citizen is celebrated. Meanwhile, the one who thinks differently is sidelined, dismissed, or punished. The result is a world that functions smoothly, but rarely evolves. History is littered with moments when obedience delayed progress. Doctors once obeyed the consensus that hand-washing was unnecessary, costing countless lives. Scientists once obeyed the belief that Earth was the center of the universe, silencing voices of truth. Entire nations have obeyed leaders into war, genocide, and collapse. Obedience may provide order, but too often, it is order in service of destruction. And this brings us to the most dangerous consequence: collective blindness. Cognitive psychology tells us of confirmation bias, the tendency to seek evidence that supports what we already believe and ignore what contradicts it. Obedience amplifies this bias because questioning the narrative is not rewarded. In time, whole societies become blind to their flaws, trapped in illusions they dare not shatter. They march toward ruin with smiles, believing they are righteous. The German philosopher Hannah Arendt called it the banality of evil. Ordinary people committing extraordinary horrors. not out of hatred, but out of obedience. Ask yourself, how much of what you believe is truly yours, and how much has been handed to you, reinforced through repetition, rewarded by approval. And then there is the personal cost, the silent tragedy few ever acknowledge. When obedience becomes your guiding principle, regret becomes your final companion. Imagine yourself on your deathbed. You have lived safely. You have obeyed well. You have earned approval, perhaps even comfort. But as you look back, you feel a hollow ache. Not for what you did, but for what you never dared to do. The book you never wrote. The truth you never spoke. The brilliance you buried so deeply it suffocated. And in those final hours, you realized the price of obedience was not safety, it was your life. UNLIVED. This is not melodrama. This is the quiet fate of millions. But obedience has another, more insidious consequence. It perpetuates itself. Each generation raised in obedience raises the next with the same conditioning. Parents reward compliance because it feels safe. Schools discipline curiosity because it disrupts order. Governments reinforce conformity because it ensures control. And thus, the cycle continues, until entire civilizations stagnate under the weight of their own obedience. But here's the cruel irony. Obedience feels invisible while you are inside it. You don't notice the cage because you've decorated it with comforts. You call it security, success, normal life. Only when you step outside do you see the bars. So the unseen consequences are not unseen because they are small. They are unseen because you've been trained not to look. And yet, you feel them, don't you? That subtle emptiness in quiet moments. That nagging suspicion that your choices aren't truly yours. That restless hunger for something more, even when you've done everything right. These are not flaws. They are signals. Your buried brilliance is trying to break free. The question is, will you let it? Or will you continue to obey, even as the unseen consequences hollow you out from within? Because the greatest tragedy is not that society rewards obedience over brilliance. The greatest tragedy is that people live their entire lives without ever noticing the trade they've made. The Rebellion, How to Break Free, Section 4. There comes a moment when the silence becomes unbearable. When the comfort of obedience feels less like safety and more like suffocation. When the rewards that once felt sweet praise, promotion, acceptance suddenly tastes hollow. This moment is the spark of rebellion, and it is here, in this fragile space, that freedom begins. But rebellion is not what you think it is. It is not reckless defiance, nor is it chaos for its own sake. True rebellion is clarity. It is the quiet but unyielding choice to stop living by scripts written for you, and to begin writing your own. How then do you break free? The first step is recognition. You cannot fight a force you refuse to see. Begin by noticing the invisible patterns of obedience woven into your daily life. How often do you silence yourself for fear of disapproval? How often do you seek permission before pursuing what you already know you want? How often do you conform not out of conviction, but out of habit? These are not small questions. They are the beginnings of awakening. Nietzsche warned that most people live as part of the herd, afraid to step beyond it. But he also spoke of the Bermensch, one who creates values for themselves, who refuses to live by borrowed truths. To rebel is not simply to reject authority. It is to claim the terrifying responsibility of defining your own life. The second step is confrontation. You must confront the fear that keeps you obedient. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of standing alone. But ask yourself, what exactly are you afraid of? Exile from a community that only accepts you when you wear a mask. Failure in a system that rewards mediocrity. The truth is, the fears that bind you lose power the moment you look at them directly. They thrive in silence, in the shadows, but once named, they weaken. Viktor Frankl's words resonate here. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing. The last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Obedience may strip you of choice, but it cannot touch your inner freedom unless you surrender it. Rebellion is the act of reclaiming that freedom, even in the smallest of ways. The third step is experimentation. Breaking free does not mean burning your life to the ground in one grand gesture. Often, it begins with small acts of disobedience, saying no when you are expected to say yes, asking the forbidden question, pursuing the idea no one else believes in. These small rebellions awaken a dormant part of youth, the part that remembers you were born to create, not to conform. History is full of such examples. Galileo, who dared to look through a telescope and speak what he saw, even when the world called him heretic. Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat, her quiet no echoing louder than any speech. These acts were small in the moment, but they cracked the facade of obedience and revealed the truth. Brilliance only shines when it refuses to bow. The fourth step is solitude. This may surprise you, but rebellion requires stepping away from the noise of the herd. Sartre wrote that humans are condemned to be free, that we cannot escape the responsibility of choosing. Yet in a society that rewards obedience, your choices are constantly drowned out by the voices of others. To hear your own voice, you must create space for silence. Solitude is not loneliness, it is the crucible where authenticity is forged. In solitude, you remember who you are when no one is watching, when no one is rewarding or punishing you. The fifth step is creation. Obedience sustains itself through repetition. You repeat what has been done before, and in doing so, you keep the system alive. Rebellion, then, is creation. It is the act of bringing something new into the world that does not fit the mold. Write the book they said wouldn't sell. Build the business they said would fail. Speak the truth they said was dangerous. Creation is how brilliance declares its existence, how it carves new paths where obedience sees only walls. But understand this, rebellion has a cost. You will lose approval. You will face resistance. You may even suffer rejection. The world does not welcome those who break its illusions, it fears them. But what is the alternative? To obey until your soul withers. To trade your brilliance for comfort, only to find comfort empty. Every great thinker, every innovator, every visionary has faced this cost. The question is not whether the cost is real, it is whether you are willing to pay it. And here lies the secret. The rewards of rebellion are not immediate, but they are infinite. The obedient life may offer stability, but only rebellion offers authenticity. Only rebellion allows you to look in the mirror and recognize yourself. Only rebellion allows you to live without regret, knowing you chose your own path, no matter how difficult. Do not mistake rebellion for destruction. True rebellion is not about tearing down the world. It is about building a new one, beginning within yourself. It is about shifting from obedience to responsibility, from conformity to authenticity, from survival to meaning. And when you do, something remarkable happens. Your rebellion ignites others. Courage is contagious. When one person dares to live brilliantly, others begin to question their obedience. The silent prison cracks, not just for you, but for everyone watching. Perhaps this is why society fears brilliance so deeply, not because it is dangerous in itself, but because it is contagious. One act of courage can unravel centuries of conditioning. One voice of truth can awaken thousands from their slumber. So, how do you break free? Not by waiting for permission, not by hoping the system will reward you. You break free the moment you choose authenticity over approval. The moment you decide that your life is too precious to be spent obeying. The moment you stop asking, "What will people think of me?" and start asking, "What do I think of myself?" This is rebellion. Not loud, not violent, but unyielding. And once you taste it, obedience will never satisfy you again. But even rebellion is not the final destination. It is only the bridge that leads to the deepest realization of all, the ultimate truth, the final, most powerful realization. Section 5. Imagine, for a moment, that you have broken free. You have stepped out of the invisible lines, torn off the mask of obedience, dared to create, dared to live authentically. At first, it feels terrifying, like walking into a storm with no shelter. But then something extraordinary begins to happen. The storm does not destroy you. It awakens you. And here is where the final truth emerges. Brilliance is not about achievement. It is not about outshining others, or gaining recognition, or even changing the world in obvious ways. Brilliance is about presence, about daring to live fully without compromise. In a society that constantly demands compromise, the deepest realization is this: obedience and brilliance are not external forces fighting for control of your life, they are states of consciousness. Obedience is the state of fear. Brilliance is the state of courage. Obedience is living for others' approval. Brilliance is living in alignment with your own truth. Obedience is death disguised as safety. Brilliance is life, raw and unfiltered, even when it terrifies you. And once you see this, the illusion shatters. Society never truly rewards obedience. It pacifies it. It offers comforts, trinkets, and titles not as rewards, but as sedatives. Golden cages, velvet chains. But the cost is always the same: your soul. Brilliance, on the other hand, may not always be rewarded outwardly. You may not always be understood, celebrated, or applauded, but it offers something obedience can never give: inner freedom. The unshakable knowledge that you lived your life as your own, that you did not betray your essence for acceptance, that you chose truth over convenience. This is the ultimate paradox. The very brilliance society fears is the only thing that gives life meaning. Think of the deathbed again. Imagine lying there, your final breaths slipping away. Will you remember the times you obeyed, the times you blended in, the times you were rewarded for following the rules? Or will those moments blur into nothing, as if they never happened? Now imagine the opposite. Imagine remembering the times you chose courage, the moment you spoke the truth no one wanted to hear, the risk you took when everyone said it was impossible, the life you lived on your terms, even when it cost you. Those are the memories that will matter. Those are the moments that echo into eternity. And this is where the final truth becomes clear. Society does not define your brilliance, you do. The trap has always been this: believing that brilliance needs permission, applause, or validation. It does not. Brilliance is not what society allows you to be. Brilliance is what you are, the moment you stop hiding. Do you see it now? The ultimate rebellion is not against society, but against your own fear. Against the part of you that still craves permission. Against the part of you that still whispers, stay safe. Don't stand out. Don't risk it. The battle is within. And here lies the most powerful realization. You were never meant to obey. Your instincts, your questions, your desires to create and to explore, these are not flaws to be corrected. They are signals of your true nature. You are not here to fit in. You are here to become, to expand, to bring forth something that has never existed before, your unique expression of life. Society rewards obedience because it fears the chaos of billions of brilliant individuals. But brilliance is not chaos. Brilliance is the order that emerges when people stop betraying themselves. Brilliance is not destruction, it is creation born from truth. The final choice, then, is yours. You can obey and be safe, or you can be brilliant and be alive. Ask yourself, what do you want written across the story of your life? They obeyed well, or they dared to live. Because the truth is this: every system that exists today will eventually collapse. Governments will fall. Economies will shift. Cultures will change. The rewards of obedience will vanish into dust. But your brilliance, if you choose to live, it will outlast them all. Even if the world never knows your name, your authenticity leaves an imprint on existence itself. You are not here to be a well-trained part of the machine. You are here to be a flame, and the flame does not ask permission to burn. So let this final question echo inside you. Will you choose the comfort of obedience or the fire of brilliance? Because in the end, society may reward obedience, but life itself, life in its raw, unrelenting truth only rewards brilliance, and the reward is freedom.